Hello, everyone.
I was like, Michelle.
Yeah, 2024 retreat. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Mr. Cooper, how are you, sir?
Doing well, brother.
It's good to see you, brother.
Yep,
Good pleasure. Excellent. Mr. Cooper does extraordinary film work.
Thank you, man.
I remember watching Amanda here like it was yesterday.
You didn't see Runaway. I produced that.
Oh, frick.
Wow.
Look at this man. He's unstoppable.
Yeah,
He's unstoppable.
Y'all watch Netflix? Y'all watch Ozark from Netflix?
I hear there's a world out there.
So the McKinney Belcher, the black guy, the FBI agent, the boyhead guy, he's in the film. He stars in my film.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I produced it. I didn't write it, though. So
Fire.
yeah, I didn't write this one.
Well done, Mr. Cooper.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, we're watching Amanda. We did like the reading in the warehouse, the pink warehouse. I remember that. That was a blast.
Yeah, that was good.
That was good times. Well done to you, sir. And La'Tasha, the one and only. How you doing, La'Tasha?
One and only.
Yes.
I am well. I am. I'm happy.
We're happy. We're happy.
We're happy you're here.
The children have been attacked. Like, literally, I walk upstairs and, like, they have her on the bed reading The Stinky Cheese Man, and Reed literally is shutting the door. He's like, go. He heard me coming up the steps. He is straight shutting the door.
He was like, I'm just going to, wherever La'Tasha is, I'm just going to be there.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be right here. He pretended to be a cat.
Yeah.
It's like, I will nuzzle. Meow.
Ginger, right?
Oh.
Ginger,
Yes.
yeah.
Ginger? It was Ginger. Yeah, it's amazing.
Happy.
Who only eats wet food.
Oh.
Yo, wet, is that what it was?
He's a very particular kitty.
That was very good. No, we were talking about Mr. Robert Butler's book. First, we were talking about that idea that when, like, a lot of times when you, like, write sentences, you don't even realize how many of your sentences as a fiction writer are kind of missequenced. So, for example, you have the sentence, Grandma's room was at the end of the hallway, and Don walked to Grandma's room. Or you say, Grandma's room was at the end of the hallway, and Don walked to it. You go, oh, well, that's a good sentence. But then you got the sentence, Don walked through the hall to Grandma's room. The second sentence is way better than the first sentence because the camera is fluent. Don, walking, hall, room. The first one is room, walking, hall. It's all out of order, but a lot of times when you write a sentence, you go, oh, well, the information's there, and you don't even realize the camera's all messed up. So, and then also Mr. Butler was warning that very often you don't realize you're writing abstractions. You say, I went outside. And Butler's like, that's an abstraction. You don't go outside. You walk through the kitchen, open the screen door, and then feel the wind on your face. But go, oh, well, that's what I meant when I said going outside. But you don't even realize that. And we were talking about, that was interesting what you were saying, Mr. Cooper, on like the difference between writing a novel or writing like a screenplay. Where when you maybe like write a screenplay, you're not having to think so much about that. But when you're writing a novel, it's interesting because I think sometimes in writing, artists don't realize that different genres or different types of writing bring with them different sentence structures in the sentences.
Well, I'm gonna say this about it. You do think about it when you're writing a screenplay, but that's the screenplay. The director make directorial decisions to show. Like it could be in a screenplay that person opened the door, walked outside down the steps. But for time's sake on set, the director may say, nah, we're going to cut the black and they're going to be opening the car door. Or they're going to be in the car driving. So that's a directorial decision. So it can be in the writing, but it may not make it into the film.
Right.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah, and it just made me think that a lot of people that are writing short stories are kind of writing it almost like a screenplay when it really isn't. It's a different genre. Like for a screenplay, you can say, oh, go outside because you're going to film them going outside. Yeah. But if you're writing the sentence for a novel, there is no showing of the image walking outside. You need to describe it.
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting because it just goes to show you that when what the advice, everyone hears the advice, show, don't tell. Well, what showing is in writing a script is different than showing in a novel or showing in or poetry or showing in dance, and it's interesting that you really have to work very, very hard. It almost gets to where you have to fit your language to your genre. If your language is a screenplay, well then you write it in a manner of assuming that there's going to be a camera to show the film, right? But if you're writing a novel, go wait a minute. The experience of this novel will always be words on page, a paper that will have to be translated into a person's head. So the words have to show everything. The words have to
words
be
have to
the
show,
experience
yeah.
of going out.
Like in film, it could be known that a person going to the store to buy some fruit. Someone could say, I thought you was going to the store. I thought you were going to buy some fruit when you went to the store. And then the person don't have to say anything, could take out an apple and bite it.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's show more, say less. The person could have said, amateur writing, would have said, well, I bought my apple. I got an apple right here. That's amateur writing.
Right.
It comes out of screenplays. You show more, say less by saying less, but you're showing the apple, bite it. The apple came from somewhere. It's a fruit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's an excellent point because, like, in a screenplay, you go, I don't need to have the dialogue reflect, I'm going to fall and die. You know, that's, I'm going to fall and die.
It's a recurring thing. Like, Josh already pointed it out.
He's like, it's done. I keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's some sort of a Lacanian psychoanalytical repression that I can't get over. This just means my mom didn't rock me enough when I was a kid. The rocking chair broke when I was 4, so I'm just leaning back now. But no, like to what you're saying, if you're writing a screenplay, you go, my dialogue shouldn't say, I have an apple right here, because there's going to be an image holding the apple.
Somewhere doing something.
Right, and yet, when you write a novel, you can't just imagine the character pulling the apple out. You have to put it on words on the piece of paper.
Right, because you can't see it.
Yeah, but you can't see it. So then the question is, how do I have a character in the mind of the reader pull out an apple without saying, I have an apple right here? Because very rarely, unless it's your children saying they have an apple right here because they're trying to keep it from the other kid and they're mocking them, most people do not just say a sentence like, I've got an apple right here. They say something like, this one? This? Or something like that. So you have to make your dialogue reflect the images that are, what is the genre? Is there going to be a camera, or is there just going to be abstract words on paper?
Right. But in a novel, you don't necessarily have to you don't have to have dialogue surrounding that. You can also state in there,
Right.
he pulls out an apple, put it on the table.
Yep.
Right.
Say nothing, and then they carry on with their conversation.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, just thinking about it from like the phenomenology of a camera. Like we have these analogies because the camera was invented, right? Because we have like cinematography. But the concept that I overheard you talking about, Daniel, where there's always like this camera playing in your head, right? Like it's always just something's playing in your head as you hear either oration, reading, or now watching movies different because now the movie in your head is the movie on the screen is going to be the movie in your head as you process that. But with reading and how the written word is processed, do we think of it as there's a camera rolling in my head at this scene because we have, what do people think about before the camera? What do they think about that thing happening in their head? That's a sort of out there question. But
No, it's an excellent question. It was a dream. It was more like a dream. It was more like imagery. And that's why Butler will talk about kind of the dream state. And there's this, interesting tradition of the movie kind of having the logic of a dream. I know Nolan used that in Inception, where it's like the way a movie kind of cuts and associates. It's kind of like a movie. It's kind of like a dream. In the same way that you just find yourself in Paris in a movie, you just fall asleep and find yourself somewhere in a dream. And so I think the metaphor is like the dream state or the vision.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about keep the camera rolling, I mean, that's a great point that, it just kind of shows the zeitgeist that you're situated in. Is the idea, does the mental movie, when you read the book, does the movie keep going? Or does it break up or not? And so likewise, before the camera, maybe you talk about the vision or the dream or the painting or something.
It's kind of interesting how then technologies sort of I guess this is what they do or can do, but they sort of, it's almost like they bring that dream, right? This kind of whatever this vision is in your head of what you're thinking about or what you're reading about into something that's external, and then they make it like here it is. This is that thing that you do in your head. We're gonna make that happen right here,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think maybe. I mean, obviously there were plays. There were plays where people were kind of having the vision in your head happening in front of your eyes. But it is a very interesting idea of thinking about reading a story versus watching a story, and how the placement, like the internalization or the externalization, the word seems to be able to do this interesting thing of this this dream-like flow in your mind, you know, of images.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, La'Tasha was talking about acting. You're taking, you know, the acting classes and improvisation in the same way that the words on the page have to, like, vanish. When a person is acting on the stage, the person has to kind of vanish in the character, right? And likewise, improvisation, there's a moment where it's flowing so well that you kind of forget, you lose yourself. You give yourself over to the performance, right? But in order for the audience to give themselves over to the performance, the actors have to have a certain excellence. Likewise, in order for the reader to give themselves over to the book, where they just let the story take them, the sentence structure has to be of a certain excellence. The imagery has to be of a certain image, because now I can give myself over to it in the same way that a good movie pulls you in. It's believable. Like, I can believe that this could actually occur, so I can trust giving myself over to it. And it's kind of interesting to think that in the same way that there's some sort of losing ourselves in an externality as a kind of flow, like you lose yourself in the words on the page, you lose yourself in the movie, you actually do something similar with actors. Like, you lose your, like, in the words on the page become invisible, likewise the actors kind of become invisible in an interesting way.
Yeah, it's just kind of, well, it made me think about how something that you, Ty, and I were talking about with the idea of art and creation, creating genuinely, being kind of an ability to be sublative in terms of the things we've dealt with in our lives, where you know, sort of thinking of art as like the potential locus for almost like a self-counseling or something like that. You know, because how else are you know, it's so hard to, sometimes there are people who've been through things, it's like, it would probably really benefit you to go and like talk to somebody who really knows how to deal with that sort of thing and really talk through that, or work through that, you know, process that, actually acknowledge it even, and work through it. But you know, a lot of times people don't go because it's like, well, no, I'm fine, right? You know, I'm fine. And I guess I've been thinking about this idea of like how to, you know, do a kind of, I don't know. I don't know why I think of it as self-inventory, but it's kind of like a self-reflective self-inventory of understanding where you're at, what you still need to work on, and all of that. Now, you may need to go to a you know, an external source, like, you know, a counselor or a therapist or something like that, potentially. But I guess it's like this interesting question of not knowing, like, how do you, a lot of people don't feel they need to, right? Or maybe you don't need to. So, but I think what's great about art is that it doesn't have that reliance on, it can in the viewership, right? In the sense of somebody might see this, right? Somebody's going to maybe watch this, like thinking about the actor, the actress, you know, the films. But maybe even that is a type of a part of the healing too, where you do the art, just thinking about art as truly a way to like as a healing form, and then thinking about that because of how much basically vulnerability it takes to write something ex nihilo, kind of just bring something out of nothing, in a sense of it wasn't there, now it is. It's not really out of nothing because it's out of the something that you are, right? But it's like this, doing that already is kind of like, why are you doing that, right? So to do that, and then to also put out your heart, your soul, the things that you struggle with, the dark stuff, the light stuff, all of it. So it's like that is can be such a sublative a thing, right? Sublative in the sense that you actually, you know, grow and improve and get better through that and face your demons, you know, and but also the fact that somebody might actually read it, right? That's kind of always the element of like, somebody might be actually seeing this, and that's what also I think there. So it's kind of like this interesting place where it kind of does have the external party of the quote unquote therapist or counselor, in that you always know that somebody can potentially read it. That's why people can have insecurities around writing or doing anything. It's like, well, I don't know, this might be stupid. Nobody's going to understand this. Maybe people are going to think I'm depressed. You know, like I said, I read this. So yeah, I think there's something really interesting about that I was just thinking about a little bit.
The one thing that you said that really stood out to me, you said something along the lines of like art as healing. And so at VCU, my acting professor, David Toney, he teaches that when it comes to acting, you're never playing a character, When you read the script, that's the character. But when you take on those words, you're a person. And so because of that, but the way he goes about coaching is you speaking in your own voice, which is important because I think that we use our voice in such a way to kind of like we use our voice as like this outward or this audio representation of like who we are and what we are capable of doing or the knowledge that we know, and so we play with pitch and a mix of other things. And so anyway, I find that not just with myself but with like the other students in the class that most of us were altering our voice in some sort of way in order to, because we thought that made us
the
more
character.
Yes. And not just the character, but it was actually in some ways some of the choices we were making are actually choices we were making in our everyday life around people. And so going back to what you said with art being healing, the fact that we all are being asked to speak in our own voice, it forces us to deal with some personal things within our own personal life that's kind of like separate from the four walls of the classroom, but like us having to like settle with some things within our own thoughts and life and beliefs about ourselves and our identities so that we can show up and be ourselves in front of the audience. So his thinking on acting is that you are simply being yourself in front of a group of people. It's just you under certain circumstances, whether that circumstance may be your father passed away and your uncle is now trying to da-da-da-da. So, and then another thing is that almost like going back to like this character versus person, I'm sure that there are some acting coaches that will use the word you are a character versus you're just a person. So one thing that he was kind of pointing out is that I think that when you, but he was saying, and then in my own ways I kind of connected some thoughts, is that when you think about acting as taking on a character, you're always like wondering, well, what would this character say? How would this character move? How would this character respond in this situation? What would this character's facial expression be? And that brings about a lot of uncertainty and insecurities because you're trying to figure out what someone else would say, think, do, feel, respond, what their pitch would be. But when you look at it as you are the person, then me sitting just like this is not only good enough, but it's the way my person would sit. So anyway, so I think that just having to no longer look outside of myself, but looking within myself and like having to really like establish who am I and how do I move in this world. I think that once again that takes me outside of the four walls of my classroom and forces me to sit down with myself and my beliefs and my upbringing and trauma and this and this, so that I am able to just fully be myself under certain circumstances in front of an audience. Does that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
No, I mean that's fascinating. A few times that was excellent. So it's very interesting. And that's the loudest moth I've ever heard. No, it's like a fly right there. But it's very interesting. So there's this long tradition, or association of art and healing, which on the face of it is not a self-evident association. And yet more and more the zeitgeist, or people kind of have a sense that there's some connection between art and healing. There's this idea, in art you can process, in art you can work through. I like what you were saying too, Michelle, with this idea that if you create something, people may see it. So there's facing fear. There's something about facing fear that is important for healing. There's something about courage that's important for healing. And, but on the idea is that art helps you process. It's not really obvious why. Like, why is it that working through or acting a scene that maybe brings you to terms with something that happened in childhood, why would that make you more able to live with it? Shouldn't it make it maybe worse because you're remembering it or something like that? So there's a question of why is there some kind of connection between art and healing. And we were talking earlier about a good novel makes the words on the page become invisible. Good acting makes the characters become invisible. And what you were saying there about there not being a divide between person and character, well, that's like you're trying to be invisible. You're trying to not think in a way. You're trying to just be. So likewise, when you read a good book, you're just reading. You're being the book. You're not really thinking. Like if you're thinking while you're reading and it's fiction, it collapses. Likewise, if you're thinking, now you want to be like thinking in an engaged way, but like in a confused way. If you're reading the book and like, I don't know what's going on, it's failing, right? If you're watching a movie and you're like, I don't know what's going on, versus thinking about it like, what's going to happen next? I'm really interested. So it's interesting. All of those are making a multiplicity one. You're making the words on the page and the movie in your head one. You're making the characters on the stage and the person's one. There's some sort of the many and the one problem in philosophy, where you're taking many and making it one. And I guess there's a way to, it's like, what else is healing? What else is healing but taking brokenness and making it one, right? Or bringing things back together. And there's something interesting about the very phenomenology of art is perhaps the habit of healing. Like the habit of making many things into one, of being able to lose yourself into, because it almost seems like a lot of healing is losing yourself in something again. Like, and that's vulnerability, right? Like you're willing to lose yourself into these characters. So there's something about healing, vulnerability, art, many in the one together. Those things come to mind.
Yeah, no, that was all really good. I really loved what you shared. La'Tasha, what really kind of resonated or what really stood out to me, I should say it that way, is like what you said about this idea of questioning yourself. Like if you're always thinking like, what would that character do? How would the character say it? You know, it's like you don't realize it. You think you're doing the best that you're doing your best, right? Like this is the right thing to do, right? Because I'm not that character, but I am that character, and so if I'm gonna be this character, then how would they say this? How would they do this, right? So it feels like you're doing the best thing, the right thing, but the underlying implicit thing that's there is I'm not sure of myself. I'm not sure who I am actually. And what's interesting about what you just said, Daniel, about the multiplicity into the one and that being healing, what's so fascinating is what it seems to me to connect it to what La'Tasha said, is it's the many to the one. Almost like stained glass, right? It's brokenness.
Yeah.
It's the whole of that beautiful image.
It makes it a sublative one.
Right? But then it actually can make you be able to be in the one of yourself, right? And doing all that inner work, like dealing with your own self so you can have your own voice, right? Are able to be whatever person you need to be under those circumstances. It's almost like, it makes me think of Paul, right? Paul's going to be able to be who he needs to be for who he encounters, to share his testimony of what he's experienced in knowing the person of Christ, right?
Sure.
So it's like that sort of being able to, there's this interesting sort of ability to, going back to the metaphor of the stained glass. Stained glass is likely to have a green piece, a blue piece, a red piece. Suddenly now, in actually being able to be the one, the sublative one of the many, you can also still be the many again, right? Now I've got this circumstance, I'm this, as an actress, I've got to do this part, but that part is now me, and my voice, right? I'm not doing the character, I'm doing me, actually.
Yeah.
So this is, I don't know if that's...
Yeah, I mean, if many is one, it can go both back.
It can go both ways, and so I think that's, like, brilliant, and such an interesting thing to think about it not being the character that you sort of always feel like you have to live up to, but actually to be the livingness, the living expression of that personhood or something like that. That you can actually get better at by being more yourself somehow. But being more yourself also should inherently have that type of self-forgetful confidence to where you're not always second-guessing yourself, that then, ironically, brings out your ego or yourself or your clumsy sort of meanness. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, on the idea of the many and the one, there's another connection of, like, getting back to nature and art and one. Like, when I look at a room, the room is one. There's many, you got the walls, we're all here. There's, like, an experience. And if you look at it, like, plants are stems, leaves. Like, nature is a constant, like, symphony of many's being one, right? And one's being many. And, like, nature does these things. And there's a way in which kind of nature almost naturally strikes relationships between the many and the one. But human beings don't seem to automatically do that like nature does. And when we talk about healing, it's almost like we're trying to get back to nature. Because another thing that people associate is like healing and getting back to nature, healing in art and nature. You often see a lot of artists that are very interested in natural things as well. And you're kind of like, why? It's not obvious why that connection should be there. But if there's something about nature as many in one coming together, you just see nature as many things as one thing at the same time. And that is healing. Like being healed. Like nature healing itself or being healed or being full is many as one, then humans are healed when they have many as one. But the human doesn't automatically do that because the brain doesn't automatically align. Like you have to train the brain to bring the many into the one. Because the brain actually naturally treats things like they're separate, right? You tend to, when if you get hurt, you try to distance yourself from it. So you don't make it one with you. Your brain is running from what you're afraid of. So your brain naturally keeps the many, and you has nothing to do with it, right? And so it's almost like there's a way in which if you engage in the practices of art, which are habits of training to make many as the one, it also has something to do with being in the image and likeness of nature, which then kind of getting back to Eden, which then you're in the garden, you're tending your garden, because there's a way in which what is a garden? A garden is many as a one, right? And it's almost like what you have to do, what art is doing is kind of treating yourself as a garden, like many things that you're blossoming. And there's something interesting to think about the arts as doing that. And it's interesting too, because often I'm afraid that we think about thinking as just what the brain does. And we were talking earlier, La'Tasha, about how the mind is not merely the brain, the mind is the body. The artist is using their whole body to think. Well, that right there is as many as the one. You're using your whole body as the mind, not just your brain as the mind. And, and what was the name of the class you were with the jaw and that you were talking about, La'Tasha?
I think we were speaking about like the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet, and just I think I shared with you my struggles growing up when it came to like vowels and spelling and like the sounds that letters made, and pretty much was just using like, what I'm trying to say is that it would have been helpful to learn like the placement of the tongue and the teeth when it comes to making like vowel sounds or consonant sounds. And I find that that the IPA chart can just be helpful just across the board, that it's something that I think should be taught in schools versus...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, what was fascinating to me about that is often people like, oh, you learn words by mimicking the sound. Like you remember the sound and then you just make the sound.
It's a little hug session.
Hug sessions are good. There you go. Bam. And it's like most of the time you think about learning words as repeating the sound, remembering the sound, so it's a purely mental activity. But what you're describing there is like, no, actually the positioning of your tongue, your jaw, so you're using your whole body to speak, not just your brain. And that's an example of the many is the one. Like your body is a many that you're using for the one speaking, as opposed to just taking your brain to speak. And so often we're trained to think not as a many to a single thought. We're not taking the whole of our body and making it toward a thought. We take our brain one thing toward the one thought. Yeah. It's not a many in the one. It's much more linear. And so it's very interesting because it's almost like art is the habit and training of how to take your whole body into a thought, into a process, which is, again, what nature does. Like nature takes its whole self into the process to grow a garden. And it's almost like we can only heal to the degree we have practices like a garden.
Yeah, that's interesting. My twin sister is a speech pathologist, so she like deals a lot with IPA, thank you. Yeah. And placement of the tongue and all of that, and I bet that could be frustrating, for you, La'Tasha, if it's like, just pronounce it like this, and it's like, what do you mean? And it's like, there's so many, I'm sure there's a lot of things like that when it comes to like just the standard learning that happen where, sometimes people can just it might click, but sometimes it doesn't click, and sometimes there's just to have that sense of like, oh, actually, like you put your tongue between your teeth, right? Like, or things like this, like, oh, it's actually, so it wouldn't just be this kind of like, I just can't say my sounds. It's like, well, I don't actually know what to do with my mouth to make that sound. If I knew what to do, I could practice that, So yeah, I could see how that would probably be, probably frustrating in a sense of feeling like, why can't I do that, but not knowing what do you mean, like, to do what? You don't know that you don't, like, that there's this whole thing going on with where you need to move your tongue, your teeth, your mouth, and it can be hard to know what you're even trying to improve.
But it's kind of like people like, get over it. Or just feel better. Don't be sad. It's like, well, where do I position my tongue? Just heal. It's like it's people actually in the same way in kind of like therapy or context, they do a similar thing. It's like, well, just make that sound. It's like, well, just feel better. It's a similar mistake.
Yeah. But you're left behind when if you have a learning disorder, and it's not, I don't know, I even question now if it's really a learning disorder, because I just learn differently.
Yes.
And if you give me the IPA chart and teach me how to make a stop plosive sound or fricative sound or whatever it may be, like I can do it.
Right.
So it's like all this undoing, I think sometimes you have to do about like your own identity. I think that some of my identity was really been, this is what I cannot do because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And now I'm learning that, wait a second, like I can actually do this, like I can design, anyway.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just makes me it makes me think that I do think that a lot of what is called a learning disability is a result of a lack of a learning method.
Yeah.
We say, oh, you're disabled, but actually it's our fault for not having the method.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Daniel. And I think too, it's almost like it is also just learning difference, not disability, but difference. It's a difference. And I think that undoing you were saying, La'Tasha, is and the unlearning, that might be where we learn the most, right? But it's harder, it's scarier. And we also don't feel like a lot of the unlearning is often like potentially heretical, like in the general sense, in the metaphorical sense of that word, where it sounds like, well, no, you can't really, but it's the thing, it's like this, it kind of makes me think of what Daniel and I, we had the privilege to teach a course at Parallax in the fall, and on Ivan Illich, and he has a really great important concept about like disability, like that basically sometimes there can be ways in which systems can sort of just make ourselves see ourselves constantly in the light of disability. And it's like
disablement.
Yeah. On top of the fact that it might not actually be training, like you're saying, not having methods, right? Not actually training, like maybe, I don't know, skills that have to do with life. So it's very, just making that switch from the disability to ability takes another dis. Like you have to negate that. And that's the unlearning, the undoing. And then this incredible kind of sweet, also scary, but very exciting realization of ability. And it's wonderful, and that truly is learning, right? Like that's really the place of learning, true learning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying there made me think as well, like artists also have to unlearn. Like you're saying, oh, I was told this is how you do poetry, but no, that's not quite right. And it's interesting because, like you're saying, there's a lot of healing that only happens when you unlearn things. And maybe another reason why art is tied to healing is because it gets you in the habit of unlearning or realizing, oh, my habit for writing sentences or poetry is wrong. Like you actually, as an artist, are always aware of the possibility of needing to unlearn something to progress. That seems to be a part of healing as well. Like you learn that, nope, you can't learn, or you're bad at speaking, or you're bad at this, or no one will love you. Right. And like the only way to heal would be to what? Unlearn that. And we don't tend to learn habits of unlearning because we don't have the classroom teach it. But art naturally, let's put it this way, art seems to entail a higher probability of learning that you need to unlearn. So that might be another reason why there's some interesting association between art and healing. And then you could also say nature kind of, dies. Nature dies to live, right? There's a certain undoing that nature entails, because there seems to be a connection between art, healing, and nature. And there's something about nature that has a kind of undoing to it. And I definitely think that so much of, like, you're disabled, you're made to feel like you're incapable of, when really it's that often just the method was lacking to help you learn in a different way. But then that's it. Nature tends to have different ways to move forward. It has different plants, different like energy sources, different animals. It has a great diversity of methods, and that's what brings out the flourishing. And what has happened is the more we move in the direction of kind of a systems that's not art based, and we have less methodology by which to be creative, because it becomes more pigeonholed in whatever is the test or the standard. Nature doesn't have a standard, actually. Nature does not have a standard of what it means to be alive. You're either alive or dead. Nature doesn't check. Nature doesn't really check criteria, because what nature does is, like, nature's like, I don't need a standard because I'm creative. I have methods to deal with whatever situation is thrown at me. Likewise, often with the arts, what do people go like, well, how do you know if it's a good story? How do you know what you're doing? The artist doesn't really think that much in terms of quote-unquote standards or criteria, and yet they can recognize when something is good or bad. There is a kind of quality judgment, but it's actually not based on a hard standard. And there's a way in which healing is the judgment of quality, because you can tell when you're healed. You can feel it. But then, if you go to your doctor, they may say, no, you've got a clean bill of health. And you're like, no, you meet the standard, but you don't have the quality. It's possible to meet a standard and not have quality. And that seems to be another reason why art and health go together, because health seems to have a lot more to do with a kind of quality. Healing, health have something to do more with a quality versus a standard. And art is a lot more interested in a sense of quality. Is this, is it there? Is the atmosphere there? And so, and also being able to sense as you're progressing toward that higher quality is something the artist learns to do. And that also, you can, like, being able to tell if you're healing or not seems to be a similar kind of thrust to tell if you're moving in a certain direction, if you can sense that or not.
I have random thought, but it's sort of related. Just thinking about, like, when you have art or you have something you've made or created or whatever, and it's sort of like there's this tension of I think about how kids are, they're just like, look, mommy, I painted this, and there can obviously be a risk to that as an adult, being like, look what I did, in a bragging sense. But kids have this way of doing it where they're really not bragging. They're just excited that they made something, and they want you to see it. I don't know. It's so easy to fall into just like, oh yeah, I just wrote this little old poem, or kind of wanting to, like, not draw attention to it. Maybe we feel like, oh, we feel bad. We don't want to, like, you talk it up or something like that. I don't know. But just that the childlike spirit of just, I made this. I just want you to see it. I just want you to hear it. And I do think that childlikeness is, or I think it has to be cultivated more and will be cultivated more in genuine creating, because it's that place where you're not doing it just to get attention, right? But you do allow it to be seen, to be heard, and not kind of make excuses about it, or sort of try to just kind of downplay, but it's so easy to just be like, to think of it as like, oh, that silly old thing. Maybe that's just something I deal with, if you don't, then that's awesome, and you've probably done work in that area to not think of it that way, to just not be bragging about it, but also to be able to allow it to be, right, to let it be, and let it be seen, let it be heard, and trust that it matters, right? So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, La'Tasha.
I wonder how much of that excitement for the child is also based on the response that he or she will receive
Yeah, I was thinking about that
from their parents. Yeah, and then I think that I don't know, and then that makes me think about, I think many artists create just for the sake of creating, yet there are moments where we create something and we know that it's meant to be shared, but do we have that person that we get to run up to and say,
right.
Yeah.
like, look
Yeah.
look what I
did.
look what I made.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to jump in there, La'Tasha.
That was it.
Well, I think that's great, and it made me think, like, maybe we are supposed to be that person. Like, the art we make or whatever we're creating is like is the child, and it's being like, mommy, look, and we have to be the ones to be like, wow,
That's a good one.
you know. I do think it's that way, because then I think that creates the proper relationship to it, because if you don't have that kind of ability to validate your own work, yes, you need to be like critical in the sense of, how can I refine this, how can I make this better, but that validation of yourself, to your work, then you will often put it out there for the wrong reasons, right? I gotta get affirmation from these people, I gotta hear what they think, right? Instead of just be like, if you have an opportunity, like just like with your own children, I love that, like, our friends who are here can see our children. Like, that brings me joy. It's like people when they're at a restaurant, like, look at my kid, they want to show pictures of their children or their cat or whatever. And it's like, it's kind of like that. Like, where you have that element of, why would I wouldn't keep my kids, in their rooms if we had guests. Like, that you bring them out to be with everybody. Like, that's what you do. They're your children. And that, I think, I did this poem for the Nietzsche conference with Philosophy Report with Cadell on Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and I was really honored to be able to be part of that and share a poem on motherhood and Zarathustra. But the main concept is that every creator is a mother, so really owning that role is to see what you create as your children.
Oh, you ought to read that poem.
Oh gosh,
You ought to read it. You ought to read it.
What? Oh, okay.
Perfect. We're gonna blend in the presentation.
Let's
Let's do it. Find it. Here it is. It's right here. Oh, it's right there. I set it up. It's right there. But it's interesting.
How to plan all this time.
Yeah, it was a plan. It was all set up. Yeah, well, the thing I was thinking, it was interesting as you were talking, because, again, the artist gets very used to showing things to people. Yeah. And why do a lot of people not heal? Because they don't show, they're not transparent, they don't talk about their pains, there's something they're hurt about that they don't want to show. It's like, oh, I wouldn't want to bring up, it's like, oh, this old thing. You're like, this same, the artist gets used to putting their stuff in front of people. And there's something about healing that can happen if you put your stuff in front of people, right? And so that's another habit or practice that maybe art gets you used to, that you become more able to put your stuff in front of people. Because, I mean, in marriage and relationship, there's like the ability to talk about things, right? But a lot of times people don't talk about things because they're like, oh, what if I'm rejected? Right. What if I'm hurt? Right. Well, that's the same kind of practice that the artist works through. So that might be another kind of part of it. Before I forget, and then Michelle, you should read your poem. There you go. Is that, here we go. Yeah, and La'Tasha, there will be fun. I might have this paper in like the second thoughts I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Like, I never wanted that to end.
Yeah.
Same? Okay,
like legendary massages.
I'm gonna get you after this.
And different things. But it also makes, because you were talking so well on the like improv and how it's so important. Like, and I definitely think like the skills of the humanities that you learn, not to get a job, but for like to learn, are actually how you're a better human being. Like the skill of improv, the ability in improv, you never say no. Whatever the person says, you say yes and. Well, right there, that's one in the many. Because you're taking the many and you're not breaking the flow. Like a good conversation is the one in the many. And so so that ability to say yes and also seems to be healing. Because it's like whatever happens to you, yes and. Yes, this trauma happened to me, yes and. you know, you're able to take the many and make a one out of it. So it's like the skill of improv also has something to do with it. So there's some water for you. So Michelle's going to read a poem.
Okay,
so it's going to be great. And Mr. Cooper, you're going to sing? Or are you going to do like Pavarotti? What are you thinking?
on a unicycle.
Singing on a unicycle?
Yeah, maybe. You have one?
You know, I actually probably do. Actually, I'm sure Reed does. I have no doubt that the children have stuffed one away. All right, Michelle, you ready?
I guess yeah.
Here we go.
Ready as I'll ever be. Okay. The sun shines for me. It casts its golden seed, saturating me in its penetrating plenitude, and whispers in my ear, "You are plenty too." And I relish in the height of it, and I beam in delight in this peak of life, this ecstasy, this bliss, oh climactic mountaintop, where all of the filling comes like an eternal return in the morning to soak the day, and with this relentless enjoyment sustains the overflow, enlivening something within. An overflow so great I cannot contain it, so I will let the excess strip down, oozing into the valley like honey, and be like a brimming, radiant cup, sloshing with woozy steps, delivering this elated glow, the light burden driving to go under. In the hollow, the sun can no longer be seen. Still, I carry its seed in my body, conceived not merely in thought but in deed. Still, no one knows but me. When I speak, faces greet me with suspicion. There is scant joy here, and yet I will let it overflow, for it wants to. This misunderstanding, this reception, is when my light burden becomes heavy. And in this heaviness, I will carry it even more. Now the mornings bring sickness, a cycle of bringing up, and I will endure it, for what I hold is endearing to me. The life the sun conjured within grows. Still it is unrecognizable, but I feel its kicking feet, its punching fist, its head pushing, its bum protruding. There is another human inside of me. Only I know it. And then, one day, it is time. It is time, and no one can stop it. No one except myself. The moment the camel's back breaks and out comes a roar of excruciating discomfort, a roar of lightning bolts to the base of the spine, madness, riddling pain. I will endure it, for the overcoming is an overflow, and so, when the water breaks, the gushing comes out from within. Freedom! Free! O sun, I had to release you only to hold you and let you go again and again. I embrace you in my arms, an offering, and realize you are my overcoming. Your tiny self brings the magnitude of 1,000 great stars. The overflow drips from my eyes in victorious weeping, even though the new battle has just begun. Prowling like the lion, I must hunt freedom in the solitude of my own desert. The eternally returning quotidian, every day like the other, and yet a multiplicity of multitasking. Laundry, meals, diapers, chores, churn the wheel, values varying with vivid individuality. And you are there, wriggling and sleeping, yet the most awake of all, not birthed from duty but a willing spirit. My children made me a child, a sacred yes to life, to their demand to drink from my overflowing milk, to their insatiable curiosity, their incessant destruction and creation, their entire natures, while constantly presenting me with life's finitude. What they endlessly want is a willful beginning, over and over, a constant movement and extraordinarily exploration driven by each unique expression of the flame within them. Bright eyes, big emotions, and wonder, again and again and again, knowing that the burden, the freedom, and the self-propelling wheel always remain in my body. May I kindle their flames as they kindle my fire. My heart explodes for the overkill. Thank you. That was fun. Thank you. Thank you guys. I enjoyed writing that. I enjoyed reading that.
I enjoyed watching and listening.
It was kind of like a playful take on the arc of Zarathustra in Nietzsche's work, which is more fictional, aphoristic, but philosophical, and thinking about how it relates to motherhood and like conception, birth, the entering into motherhood, and thinking about that as the creator, where you have your idea, right? Like just when I know I'm pregnant, it's like nobody else knows really. Nobody else knows, but I know, and I can feel it, and I wanted to sort of think about that, like this idea of being sick. Like, at least for me, not every woman has morning sickness, but this idea of how something takes over inside of you, and there's this almost like you're sick. You're like just there's so much that sort of it impacts you in a way, and so many people, like, if they didn't know you're pregnant, they'd be like, "Are you okay? Like, what's wrong with you?" And that's a lot of times when you've taken hold of that creative seed, like, you know, you're not doing maybe some of the things you usually would be doing, or whatever, you having to say no to certain things or yes to certain other things, and it's like, if people don't know what you have conceived inside of you, they would not understand that. You know. So,
just as a quick note, you know, if you never gave birth, you'd be stuck in the sickness.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the birthing is the healing.
Yeah.
So like the art and the healing, like to birth is to heal.
And you know, it's kind of interesting because like that's my experience, especially in the first trimester of pregnancy. But not every woman has that. So maybe it would be more relatable, you know, for people who actually have that experience. I don't, you know, to link like sickness with pregnancy itself. I don't know if I would go that far, right? Because there's a lot of it too where you're feeling great, and it's but it is an interesting thing, right? Because like, you know, another example, like say you give birth in a hospital. Usually you go to the hospital because something's wrong. Something's right. Like you're having a baby. You know, so it's like these strange
and the body changes. I mean, the body changes and has to heal back from that.
It's like you have to heal, but you didn't get injured. You know what I'm saying? That's a birth is such a beautiful, crazy, paradoxical thing that also I think reveals the nature of creativity, right? Where it's it's kind of like, it's not a wounding, it's a wombing, right? Or it's like it's a kind of, you know, it's a bleeding from a sense of
life.
Yeah. It's not. I know. I want to think about some sort of like wordplay with the word injured now, like not injured but incurred or something like that. Like there's something like that. It's not an injury, but you are bleeding. You know, like I think about birth and how like there's bloody and liquids. I'm sorry, it's just
well, that's how a lot of people feel though about trauma.
That is what it is. You know, that's the rawness of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but you're bringing life out.
Yeah, I mean that's how a lot of people feel with like traumas. You're not injured. Oh no, you know, you didn't get hit. No, you're injured, but you know, you weren't injured, but you're bleeding.
Yeah, but that's where like we can see the incredible redemptive place that there even is in trauma, right? Like it's not something you go to seek out really, but there's also, in a way, I think that's what I hope this poem can speak to as well, is this sort of where there's the willing is the way, or something like that, where that even ability to be open to, and I think there's a real deep, difficult, you know, place for a mother psychologically, where it's like you're bringing these beings into the world, and then you think about some of the things that happen in the world. You're like, what am I doing? What? Oh God, what have I done? You know, and yet, like we have this kind of impossible call to create life in the midst of, you know, death, in the midst of darkness or brokenness, and yet that life, that light is enough. And it is what we need, you know. So, yeah, I think that goes for all the artists. That goes for the creative. That is their task, is to be willing, you know, to do the laboring, to let it come out. So, to let that inward come out, letting, you know. And that's the thing. Like all of the things that we may have suddenly some idea for, like that compelling. I love that language from Rilke, the poet, where that compelling is often a interesting intersubjectivity, right, of ourselves and something sparked, something lit up, some dream was just too cool not to make something out of, or whatever. So it's that interesting kind of connection. Like in Zarathustra, the sun is like this, the source for Zarathustra, where he then has this sense of he needs to take this and show it to the people in the valley, you know. And so I think of it like that sort of conceptual moment of that climactic moment, where it's both it's that constant dance between the external and the internal. That I think the artist may have a greater touch with that. Is put more vividly in touch with. I do also believe that like everybody's a creator to a degree, because even though we don't always like, one last thing, when we were doing this event at UNOI one time, I know you, Bernard, was in it, some other people were in it, and I just read a poem up there on the mic, you know, but I remember hearing people just sort of chattering behind us, you know, like, oh, I wish I was that creative, you know, so stuff like that, which I just, you know, to me, I was always like, you are. Yeah. You literally create your day every single day with your attitude, with your choices, with what you think about, what you eat, what you put on your body, what you don't put on your body, whatever. So it's like, there's just this, we are all creators, and so stepping up into that role, the responsibility of that is, I think, important, and yeah, it can be nerve-wracking, but it's also very, very exciting. Very, very cool.
No, I mean, it you know, so birth, many one, sperm, egg, zygote, many one. You know, creative, you're like, I wish I was that creative, so you have a thought going against your desire, so there's a split. When you actually have the courage, there's a many in the one. You're making your emotions and your mind come together. There's something about this bringing of many into one. Many days into the one day of having the baby that comes together, and thank you for reading the poem.
Oh, yes,
Appreciate
certainly.
that very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Very, very much. And where also too, on that idea of and yet, and you're willing to do it. There's something about creativity of like, why am I doing this? Like, and you're facing, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I having a kid in this dark world? Or, like, why am I going to, like, why am I going through this in the act of labor? And there's something about creativity that is choosing to submit yourself, you know, and likewise giving yourself to the labor, you know, choosing to submit yourself. And it's interesting because the moment you choose to submit, many have become one. There was you and the thing, and you fought it. But then you submit to it, and now many are one. And, you know, this many oneness seems to be healing. And a lot of, like, mental illness is a result of many not being able to become one. Or the artist is burdened when they can't take their many ideas and make a one thing. And maybe, you know, I was talking with Clayton about it, maybe wisdom is the bringing of many into one. The learning, he was making the example. I love Clayton, he's amazing, in Australia. And he was talking about when you ride a bicycle, you need many skills to do the one thing of riding a bicycle, right? It's like there's actually a bunch of things that make possible riding a bike. So likewise, it seems like being human requires many things into one thing. Being an artist requires many into one. And there's something about the many and the one that is not an erasure of difference. It's not erasing complexity. It's learning to coordinate complexity into a oneness, into a unity, into a harmony. And that seems to be healing. Like, that seems to be the practice of art is the very practice of healing. It's the same formally, structurally. And when you're willing to submit yourself to something, many become one. You're giving yourself over to the thing. And look, I mean, there is a long, mysterious tradition in religion, sainthood, between pain and sainthood. You know, there's a long tradition of some mystery where, you know, you were saying trauma can be good. Well, that, you know, not just Christianity, it's like a global thing, that there's some mystery about human beings, that if you want to be a saint, or if you want to become fully human, you have to go through suffering. Well, there's something about creativity that does that. The artist is intentionally doing something that requires a kind of suffering, and you could be deeply rejected, or monetarily. There's certainly a kind of othering that occurs. So that, and yet, what's interesting is there's something about the only way many can become one seems like it has to do with pain. Isn't there something painful about taking many and putting them into one? That seems like a kind of pain there that seems to occur. And so what is it, again, in all these religions, sainthood and all of that, there's something about pain that seems to be the price or part of the very process of many becoming one.
This is kind of out there, if I'm going to say it. I was just thinking.
Oh, good. You're only allowed to say things that are out
only
there.
out there.
We don't want anything that's, any of that in there. We don't want. We don't want any of that in there.
Out there, so to be part of the many, we can make it into the one. Right?
Bam! Bam, Michelle. It's healing. We're going to make Ty show us a movie, and it's going to be audio. It's going to be an audio recording. We're going to get Ty. He's going to...
That's hilarious. But I do have a question for Ty. So
What's that?
Oh, bam.
Well, I'll say my thing.
Yeah,
on
say
this.
you're out there so we can
Out
heal
there
the
thing.
universe.
Well, I was thinking about the word pain. I was thinking about like a window pane. I was thinking about the difference in their spellings and how pain, when it becomes like almost like the jouissance that they talk about in psychoanalysis, right? Where it's almost like you would.
You said that French word so well.
Well, thank
You've been taking that class at BCU.
French on
You've been moving your tongue right.
for French, yeah.
Yes, there now.
But it's like, pain can also become pleasure in the sense that it can become the idol, to always
Sure.
be in pain, right?
Sure.
To always
Sure.
suffer, right? But the proper relationship is to, accept it when it comes, right? Like the labor, right? You accept it when it comes. And I think that the word pain, I frankly, I'm like, how do you spell window pane? But I think it's spelled differently. Okay.
So homophone.
Yeah, that's right. So like the reason why pain becomes like the pain in the negative sense of it becoming like the pain pleasure jouissance, like the sense of kind of obsessing over it and making that almost the idol is I, right? Like this sort of like I have to be like it's almost like this. The fact that there's an I in there reminds me that when it becomes problematic relationship with pain, it's almost egoic, right? It's like the I kind of wants to kind of take over and be like, at least I have the certainty that I should always be in pain, right? Not that I'm saying like we shouldn't. It's this relationship with pain of being able to accept it when it comes and even allow it, right? And do things that we know are going to be probably pretty painful, but not be like day in, day out self-flagellation. But of course, there were saints who even participated in that. So what I mean to say is like this relationship with pain is something that's interesting to me versus the window pane, which now I would really help if I knew this.
That's good. I said P-A-Y-N-E, and I'm questioning myself. I'm like, I don't know. See, I need to take that class. It's like Y and I are really similar.
but this concept of then we like in the sense of letting the ego dissipate, then we can actually see kind of through. We can see a bit more through. We can see ourselves through that pain. You know what I'm saying? So
that's a poem title.
Well, I
Window pane.
But it was something that came to mind. So yeah. But I am going to ask Tom a question. Oh yeah,
Because
please.
that may take us off topic, right? So can I
Right.
say something that's
Yes, ma'am. Please
still
do.
like
But the out topic is going to be the in topic because it's the many and the one, so it's healing.
So I like speaking on just pain. The person is consistently in pain. Like if it's, and the thought that came to me is that they is crying to versus before, which may not make sense. So I guess if I could reword that, there was a point in my life when I was crying to God. When I was in pain, I think that there are many different ways to cry to God. It doesn't actually have to be tears. But when you're in pain, or when I was in pain, I would cry to God. As in, I'm crying to you, thinking that you'll see my pain, and you'll do something. You'll whip out your magic.
You got your get out that wand. You like Hogwarts.
You'll rain that manna down from heaven. Like something. But I was crying too.
Kroger sale.
And nothing, right? So nothing would happen, and then that just messes with used to mess with my relationship with God, because I'm like, what, you're just not showing up, or whatever it may be. But through like time and renewal of the mind or whatever, I came to a place that I don't cry to God, but I cry before Him, which means that I'm allowing, like, I'm not allowing, that's not the right word, but with this pain, this sorrow, whatever it is, I know that my Father is a witness of that, but I'm no longer, I know that He's witnessing that, but I also know that I have, like, the wisdom or the what's needed in order to be able to navigate through or over, da-da-da-da. And so, in some ways, it's holding on to this pain, and the pain is real, but this person is holding on to it, thinking that it's going to move or change whatever that other is, versus, like, realizing that it doesn't work like life never works that way. And the sooner you realize that, it then puts almost like power and authority and power in your hands to then take the necessary steps in order to work through or over or whatever. So,
well, the idea of, almost nobody would say this, right? It's like making pain the identity, or making pain the pleasure, making pain the idol, right? And nobody intends that. Nobody's consciously doing this, And I wouldn't even say that, Bob at Kroger would necessarily be doing such a thing. But it's such a beautiful point what you say, where our posture in pain, it has to be a complete surrender. It's not, pain can't be used like a bartering chip or something like that. Yeah. And I think sometimes we wish it would, right? If I'm hurting this much, this should be like, what's my, how this is a huge bartering chip. Like, come on, I should be getting a lot for this. Nope, you get nothing. And it is purely for its own sake. But in that moment, I think what we realized, it was always actually for our own sake. It was for our own sake to be able to be able to feel that, experience that, and then actually be able to ultimately let it go. Let yourself feel it completely, and then be able to let it go. For no reason except for you. You need to do that for yourself. Yeah. But that was really, really beautiful, La'Tasha. Really good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's almost like the difference between standing at the window waiting for it to be unlocked to go through it, as opposed to being before the window to see out of it. Using pain to try to get through, as opposed to pain being a way to see. Eyes. Like when, pain can be a way to see world differently. Like a deepened kind of way, right? And there's a way in which if God takes your pain, you can't be deepened. You can't learn to, like, be before Him. Because there's something about pain. Well, pain means that there's now a split between you and world. And that means there's a many. And if He took that pain, it would remove the kind of difference that creates the many. That's the bomb. Turns out. Yeah, it's like, he's got to go to the bathroom. He's looking at his clock. He's like, 5, 4, 3. Yeah, I didn't want to answer that question, whatever it was. I didn't get out before that question. Well, hear that. I don't want that. Well, it's like pain makes a division between you and world, and now there's a difference. Before that, there's a one, but it's a kind of cheap one. It's not a mini and the one. A bomb was going off in your computer. It started my clicking, clicked up, beep, beep, beep. Oh, say goodbye to your loved ones. Beep, beep, beep. Nah.
We thought you made a nice safe exit.
I think friggin', no, that's Haven over there with his password. He's like, I told him I had his password. Hacked up into that thing. He's up on Scratch, upstairs using Bluetooth. He's like, man, I like this Social Security stuff. This is great. But no, there's something about pain that is necessary for you to know that you and world are different. And now it's possible to move from a cheap one to a costly one, like a meaningful harmony. Like something that never breaks off from something cannot be deeply unified with it because it was just made together. But when there's a break, now there can be a kind of deepening relationship between it. Like, pain is where you can choose God. Like, if you never had pain, well then, yeah, God's great, of course. So there's something about pain that is the space that makes it possible to choose. Because pain also gives you reason not to choose. So if you choose, it's really meaningful. Like, when you choose to do something that's enjoyable, is that really a choice? Kind of, but not really. It's more like, yeah. But choice tends to emerge in pain. Meaning tends to emerge in pain because the environment is not giving you the motivation. You have to give yourself the motivation. And so there's a real choice there, and there's a certain deepening that's possible because of that. That otherwise would not be possible. And I think the artist learns that. To go back to the artist, like the artist learns that there's something you gain in doing a creative project that everyone thinks you're crazy to do and that you sacrifice for, and people are like, why? The artist knows that there's something gained by that can't be gained any other way. And so likewise, you learn that, oh wait, in pain is a possible freedom that's not possible in any other context. There's a possible choice. Because, I mean, like like you were saying, the pain before, it's hard to think of a more free act than choosing to stand still. To stand still with the pain. Because, like, if you feel pain, then it's just kind of logic. It's not really freedom, it's more like logic. It's just logic that if you feel pain, you try to get rid of it. It's not really freedom, it's just logical.
What?
And I think most of what we conflate, I think a lot causal, you could say. I mean, I think a lot of what we call freedom is actually just logic. Like freedom is found in the ability to say, no, I'm feeling pain, but I'm going to actually be before God in it. And likewise, as a creative, it's like, yeah, no, I'm not getting paid for this. I know people think I'm crazy, but I'm going to do it. There's a unique freedom in that.
Well, there's something ironic.
That then's probably tied to healing.
Yeah.
Freedom and healing, that's associated, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's really, really great. And it made me think about that type of situation if somebody does find themselves kind of always in pain, right? And what the irony there might be that they're actually like, and it would be so particular, like you couldn't really know unless you kind of knew the person, really knew the person.
I mean, if you hung out in Kroger's all the time, you never left.
Right, but
don't die. Don't die.
But there's something about the irony is like, it's gonna sound awful, but it's almost like it makes you wonder if maybe they're always running from pain and always being in pain. Like there's something about maybe
they're not standing still.
Yeah, the standing still thing, where it's like, are you even letting yourself be in pain enough?
Yeah.
Let yourself
in pain enough. They're not standing in pain. They're kind of running from it.
Yeah, but in a sense you're like, but that doesn't make sense. They're always saying that they're hurting or that they're in pain or this, that, or the other, But it's almost like, again, I don't know if that's kind of an over-identification with it or something, but it sort of reveals that it's almost like there is something about pain that, I don't know, in a way it's not, it's meant to be able to be the place of potential alchemy, right? For where you can, maybe you could call it self-deception, where you allow the pain to be something you see as even pain to be as something as you see as joy. Just like as a mother, you're like, like I've got a friend who's waiting to give birth, and like she's like, come on, he wants to have it happen, right? Why? Because she wants to meet that baby, right? She wants to, but she doesn't know, it's her first experience, but it's like, that's also some hefty stuff you're like bringing on yourself, like, let's go, which is amazing. But what I mean to say is that you can actually like see a type of, it's not that the pain isn't really pain, but it's your ability to see it as something wildly beautiful, wildly necessary, and wildly invited, because you know what it's going to lead to. Well, I guess I'm trying to think of pain as this, like, in a way it almost feels like pain was never meant to just be a stagnant thing. Like, no. It was meant to be, I don't want to say transitory, but kind of transitional, in a sense that it's always meant to kind of be able to be alchemized into that redemption, into like, the pain of the night, the joy comes in the morning. Like this concept that things are moving, right? Things are moving, things are changing. So, but it's weird because like, but aren't they running away from their pain? They're moving a lot, right? Like to connect back to, but I think there's this sort of weird thing where maybe it's like when we're actually able to stand still, that the moving, we allow that internal movement to finally happen. Like we were so scared of that. I don't know. I think it's just interesting to think about that, because there's something interesting about pain and its ability to be the transition. And that's a key term in labor, right? When you're transitioning, you're like, I cannot do this anymore. This is not like, no, I cannot do this. And that's exactly when the baby needs to be pushed out.
There's, and I'll let you ask your question, Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
And, in about 30 more minutes, about half, the night is, we got to get to 3 a.m. So, but there's something about the body feels pain as it's healing, right? There's pain and healing are tied together. Right. There's something also about when you do a creative act, you're not running from the creative act, you commit to the art. So there's a certain standing still in activity, in creativity, a commitment. Likewise, there's a certain, when you stand still in the pain, you believe the pain heals you somehow.
Yeah.
Like when you're trying to get through the pain, you're actually also getting through the healing. Like if you got away from pain, you couldn't create anymore, because there is an inherent pain in creation, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons you need to learn to be before God in pain, not trying to get through the pain, is because God's like, well, if you actually got through that pain, you'd stop healing, or you'd stop deepening as a human being. Yeah, if you avoided it and you couldn't create. There would be the Jungian alchemy. That was nice. And there's something about alchemy. Well, that's a great term. With Mr. Rogers there, alchemy is a kind of many to one. Transformation. Eucharist, transubstantiation. Transubstantiation, Eucharist, alchemy. All of these seem to be a kind of many to one. All of these seem to be the ability to take many things or different things and make them into something else. Mm-hmm. Creativity is to take many things into a oneness. All of these seem to be the movement of healing, but the movement of healing is also through pain. Like pain is the medicine. Yeah. But you have to take your medicine. And there's a pain from running from pain. There's also
which pain do you want, man? It's either it's almost this kind of it feels like it kind of comes down to that. It's gonna be.
Well, we're all in sin sick, right? And the medicine is pain. So if you run from the pain, you stay sick. So you stay in a kind of pain. Yeah. So you never heal.
Yeah.
Do you think that pain is a liminal space?
Oh yes, yeah. It tends to be a place of limit. In a limit, the funny thing about a limit is, following Hegel, if you know about a limit, that means you're on the verge of passing it. But the question... Liminal is like the limit space, like the limit of thought. So, kind of the edge or different things. Or I certainly hope so, because that's how I've been talking about it for a very long time in front of people who never said anything. I was like, the liminal. It took me a while, because it sounds like lemurs. So, you hear the lemur web, like the lemur space.
Well, I do think it has something to do with limits, and also it makes me think, though, too, limerence.
Sounds like a soft drink. Liminal. Now that I say it, we got a brand, baby. We're going to sell drinks. Soft drinks.
At Kroger's.
Yeah, at Kroger's.
Yeah.
Near the steak shrimp on Sunday. It's going to be great. Shrimp.
But yeah, I think of it as the limits, but what do limits connote but the transitional or the
that's right.
Liminal.
Limits are also definitions. Limits are defining. So pain defining, liminal, transitional. And also pain, there's something about pain where you're, for Hegel, a limit, the experience of limit is the experience of a beginning. Because the limit if you know there's a limit, here's the key, if you know there's a limit, that means you also know there's another side. You can't think of a limit without there being also thinking about a other side to that limit, because there's no such thing as nothing. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about a limit, then you're also glimpsing the beginning of a new horizon. Every limit must be a horizon. So, pain is always a kind of horizon. But we have to pressure people to present because we made Michelle. But you, Mr. Cooper, you had a question for Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, I was thinking about Ty. I think you do this really well, Ty.
What's that?
Every time.
Yeah.
Looks, your code,
So sweet.
But you'll make a film like Amanda, and then it's let's go show it to people. You know what I mean? I think that's amazing. It made me think of the art, or that kind of how I was thinking about the analogy of the child to the mother. Look what I look what I made. I made this. And I think there's this like that. What is it? What is it? What's the thoughts or the feelings or the motivation behind like, yeah, let's go get Amanda out there. You know what I mean? I would love to know that because I feel like you do that really well, and I love that, and it's inspiring, really.
It's different for different projects that I do.
Yeah.
Because not every project has the same meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't every project doesn't articulate the same how it will help someone. So Amanda can help someone. You know, Amanda addresses suicide, cancer, art, community, love.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important message. And as a filmmaker, we have a certain responsibility. Or any creative has a certain responsibility. One, we create a body of work to share. Or, as I stated before, if it's for you and your mom, then you don't show it to anyone. It's just in your house on your computer.
Mom, come over.
Yeah,
I got some shrimp.
But if you create it to put it out, then you created to put it out, and we put it out. And I think, you know, I've screened Amanda, you know, various times at different theaters that I've rented. And the great thing about it is that it was the response, right? The response was so like, I believe inspiration comes from within. I believe motivation is external factors. It can be mostly external factors. So for me, you know, when I have a panel discussion after the panel, let's say it was in Richmond, everywhere we've gone, Richmond, Norfolk, D.C., Stanton, Gay-Lax, Virginia, Eastern Shore, like everywhere I screened the film, every single location, I had people crying during the panel discussion, telling me that their brother just died from brain cancer 2 weeks ago, or someone, you know, it resonated with someone because of it was so relatable to their daughter, or all these different things, right? So that's my motivation of screening it. It's not just the money, because yes, I do make money from touring, right? Because I believe I'm a businessman before I'm a filmmaker.
Right.
But, and I think, and I would never have a body of work on my computer living there without putting it out. That would never ever happen to me. Never happen. A million years. So I don't create for that reason. I don't create to keep it on my computer and not put it out.
Dress up the hard drive dressing.
I defy that kind of thing. I'm not that kind of artist. Unfortunately, there's many artists like that because they don't have the outlet. They're not a business person. I've been in business for 32 years. You know what I mean? So started my business when I was an undergrad. So for me, yes, I want to make money from my craft and my art and what I do, but at the same time, and I have a thing like Amanda, it hits different because I know where I wrote, direct, and produced it because of all my family members who died from cancer. Right. You know what I'm saying? And my mother and father both had cancer, you know, while I was writing it and stuff like that. So I have different motivation things because of for Amanda. Something else, like, I just produced 2 films, you know, like a year ago. I didn't write those. So me showing it is for a different reason. It's not that thing inside of me that I birthed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, so it's a totally different thing. But so those projects, both of those projects, putting them out is to put them out because it's a business. I don't have any emotional things, so I'm not trying to change someone's mind. I'm not trying to like make someone better. I'm trying to make someone better from Amanda because Amanda has a message of open your eyes and see what's around you. You go to the deli, don't think that because someone is serving you that it's all good for them. Like they're your beck and call. Because you don't know what they're going through. It's the same thing with Amanda. Amanda committed suicide, but if that could have probably been prevented if people really truly tapped in, you know. But she hit it well, like, you know what I mean. So it's hard, but you just never know what someone's going through. Basically, is what the message is. So you know, you write someone day by getting them. So it's things that Amanda has. So it's not a financial thing in a sense of like that being a priority. For me, the priority is the message, the impact, the change of heart, the paying attention to other people, and then the money. Because the money comes from all those things. Once I connect to an audience and people talk about it, I'm going to make the money regardless at another stop. But the other things I do is like, you know, it's just kind of like, it just depends on what it is. So that's why I described those other two films. And one of those films is really deep. You know, like Runaway is a period piece. That was hard to make. Like we was out there freezing our ass off February until 12 o'clock midnight.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
And that was like next level filmmaking for me because I was a producer, but I'm paying close attention to the director, Eric Hurt. I don't know if you know Eric Hurt or not, but he's amazing. So I'm learning from that. So now putting that out is, like I said, it's a different thing. It's a different reason. It's not because of anything emotional.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the thing about me. It just kind of really varies.
Yeah.
Mingle, although Mingle had nothing to do with cancer, but when I filmed Mingle the second time, because I re-filmed it, my mother was, you know, in Sloan Kettering, you know, having an operation, you know, cancer, you know, in 2018. Mm-hmm. So when I did Mingle, like I went to New York, went to B&H, got a lens, went to the hospital. My mom was in already. My dad and my brother was out there. So I went to the loft on 67 Park Street, Central Park West, set up everything. Actors came over, you know, we started shooting. 1 o'clock, 12 something at night, I went back to the hospital, sat there with my mom for a few hours, you know, went back to the loft, got ready for the next day. So it was a whole bunch of stuff. So when I was putting out Mingle, although it didn't have anything to do with my mom per se, it was a project that I was doing that my mom was like really like influenced my decisions on what I was doing that weekend. And so when I put out Mingle, I was putting it out with my mom on my mind like, every single time. So, and I got tons of awards for that. I got some awards for Amanda. So, and then here's the last thing about Amanda release and putting it back out there. Amanda was never created for the film festival circuit. It's 45 minutes. Yeah. Like no film festival want a 45-minute film. Like they just don't want it. Like it's just not. Right. It's too difficult to program. And there's no stars in it. So if it was like, maybe if it was, you know, I don't know, Jack Nicholson or somebody, then the man would be like, you know what, this awkward 45 minutes, like, we don't know where they're going to go, but they're going to go somewhere.
He got one of the guy at the bar with the Jack Nicholson face on. He's just over there like, Jack Nicholson?
Yeah, so like, you know, but, I purposely did not write it. I did not write that I didn't create it for the film festival circuit, which means that I have to put it out if it's going to be seen. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things tied in with that, but like that's just what it is. It's just at the end of the day, art. I love art and I love creating. I've been creating for a long time. I create my business like almost every day because I have clients that I'm producing, you know, commercials for them. So there's always art. For me though, it's like it's a business. Like art is a business.
Well, I think that's really interesting what you said. Thank you for what you shared. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I'm good.
It made me think about like how it sounds like from what you shared that there can be a really like that can be a powerhouse combination to do business and art. Like like if you are a good businessman, which you are, and then you're a good artist, like which you are, it's like whoa, you can get stuff done and you can do it and it's really neat because then like you have. Instead of having that kind of like existential crisis about putting your stuff out there, know you're like, well, this is helping people in some way, and I can see it and I know it. Just like you can test out if a business is working or whatever, like, and so then it's almost makes it a little bit more. It's still tied to like the emotions in the sense of like wanting to help people or better people or making people feel not so alone in what they're dealing with or whatever, but it's like. This needs to be done, just like you'd have to do stuff in a business. Like I guess that to me, I feel like the artist could really learn a lot from the businessman and businesswoman or the business mindset to understand that hey, like you should start seeing your art like that because it's just as necessary as like the businesses that help keep the world running or whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think there's like you've got many contacts because you do the work for clients, right? Yeah. But then. Nobody was demanding Amanda to be made, right? Like that was your inner seed. Like that really needed to come out, you know.
Well, each thing is a separate business.
Yeah.
So
its own thing. You know?
So my branding, my branding and marketing company is where I have clients where I build. Like I have political candidates. I have seven political candidates currently in office, and they range from Biden's back. He backed my client in Delaware. She's a state senator, so I have her as a client. She's in office, and I have various people throughout Virginia. So for me, and I have nonprofit clients. I have for-profit clients, and I have municipalities as clients. So that I build websites, photography, television commercials, documentary style stuff, and I do a lot of consultation where I don't do anything but talk. So that's like that, but that's a separate business. That's just the business. My passion and my creative passion, the business helps me design and build a new house. It takes care of all those things, but it gets in my way because my passion is what I really want to do. Like my writings and my filmmaking, and that's the stuff that I really want to do. But my lifestyle is too expensive, so I have to put a lot of time into this, more than I want to be real with you. And I'm not wealthy enough to not do it. Like I just not willing to make the sacrifice to. My a perfect world is that I don't have to work and do anything for 6 months, and I can just write.
We all.
Like that's my 6 months.
I want longer than 6 months.
Yeah. I want longer than 6 months, but it's not a reality.
Let's go ask Haven really nicely. Hey, Have.
6 months.
Just half a year, man.
6 months. 6 months is truly not enough, but if I know that I do have 6 months, but I could just wake up in the morning and go down. Like I'm building my screening room right now as we speak. I got contractors in there. Well, tomorrow morning they'll be back, but that could be my haven to work, right? Because right now, when I built the house, we moved in May. I didn't have my builder build it because he wanted too much money. So I have someone else that built it out, designed it and built it out and everything. So things may change for me because I'm gonna have a space of really truly like pumping out work. So 6 months would be great if I can do that. But to be honest with you, I'll take 2 months. If I know I got 2 months, I'm like, okay, that's all I got. All right, let me put my head down, and no one gonna see me. No one will see me though, because Daniel and I were talking. I'm actually an introvert, but I have an extroverted career. So if I don't get out there, extroverted in an extroverted way, I'll starve. So I have to be out there, but I don't draw my energy from any human being. Like no human being. I don't draw energy from any human being.
I get it. It's okay. It's okay. I get it.
I'm a true introvert. Like,
I get it. He's up in Ty's up in Kroger and he's like, stay back. I don't draw no energy from no human being. I ain't no X-Men. Stay back.
It's work. Like other humans are work for.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are, Ty.
They
are.
a little
Humans are work. That's exactly right.
So for me, it's like I do what I have to do. I'm a help this romantic.
He up in Kroger.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Is it possible for someone to not draw any form of energy from someone else?
Yo, it's
depends on what you mean.
Yo, no, yeah. Exactly.
They can hand you a Twinkie.
I'm in Sundance working rooms all day long.
Yeah, that's what you do.
All week.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sick now. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. They took your energy. He's like, see, they took my health.
So don't think for a minute. But a lot of those filmmakers in Charlottesville, those like, I hate to call them, well, they're filmmakers. They make some stuff. But the thing is, it's like, I think they all think of me, like, look at me as like the money guy or whatever, and not really like that true artist. But they don't know me because I've written various stage plays that hit the stage in front of an audience of 1,000 people or so and stuff like that. No one ever knew that when I came to Charlottesville. 'Cause I was promoting concerts and shows. I opened up the dry cleaners. Yeah. So I was just business until I wrote for 24/7 for live arts. Three plays and everything. And then they were like, "Oh, you right." Like, yeah, man, this is what I do. Like, you don't know me.
Right.
Like, people think they know me and they don't actually know me.
Right.
But I choose for them not to know me.
Yeah.
Because I don't need them to know me.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm in my own
They take your energy.
Exactly.
They take your dreams, too. Exactly. They have a way of doing that.
Exactly. So that's why, like, this place, like, to be honest with you, y'all house, your farm, has always been a place that I love and always wanted to come to and always enjoy it. Any opportunity, if I'm available, I'm gonna come, because this is a place of like people who I just like, be myself, and have always been myself, and we shared art, and we gave feedback and stuff like that. And
Was
for
your
years.
first time showing up the first time I came? Was it first?
Yeah, the first art retreat all came together. Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
you showed Mingle. It was like the premiere.
That was me. That was me.
You like showed the first or man.
That was the very, very first one.
Yeah, you showed that here. Yeah.
So
We did it out there on the porch.
Yeah, I remember that, but I don't know if that was the first one or not. But it could have been. Yeah, maybe, because I made Mingle in 2018.
Yeah, I think it may have been.
So, yeah, it could have been.
We may have done one before that. I do know that first time we did, like with the poets, we had the piano. We tried to play and the speaker didn't work. And we brought the screen out.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, we brought the screen out. That was really cool.
Yeah. So.
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate you saying that, Ty. I feel the same way.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely been, and even the fact that we're having these discussions.
Yeah.
Staying connected is like
important.
Important. It's very important.
It's very important.
It's very important.
It's very important.
Yeah, it's very important.
Well, we were just talking just as a note. I mean, it is so easy to let things slip away.
Mm-hmm.
You stop doing it,
and the time flies.
And it flies. Good Lord,
you look back and be like, oh man, we haven't seen each other in how many years?
Oh, it's forever.
God, that's
it's crazy.
It's
crazy.
Yeah, it's illogical.
I'm glad you feel that way here, Ty. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the good food. So it's really a true.
Yeah, Michelle's the last. She made that friggin' lemon chicken. The heck was that?
It's really truly an artist retreat. You don't have to always have the same.
Right.
Do the same exact things and stuff. The fact that we just talking and.
Oh yeah.
About art and just the philosophical.
Oh yeah.
Aspects of art and approaching art as a creative is like really important. It's like it's more important than just sitting here talking like that. It's more important than just like me being back in my house. You know what I mean?
Oh sure.
It's like
Absolutely.
For real. So I enjoy it.
We feel the same way.
We feel the same way. Yeah. We love it. We love it so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's how people think about me, look at me, and I'm cool with them looking at me that way because it doesn't impact me in any kind of negative way.
But
it's nothing that they do because I'm creating, and I'm big on providing platforms. Like I'm providing platform for people to show their work at the festival and at the indie short film series that I did since 2019.
Yeah.
Like so the same people who may look at me he's just business. He don't care about art. Like, dude, I'm screening your films. I'm allowing you. I'm allowing you to talk. Yeah, I'm allowing you to speak in front of people. So but they look at me different now though, because they know all the awards I won. From the films and stuff. So I think they look at me a little bit different. But I don't actually really care necessarily. But I just know.
They just take energy. They just take the energy.
I'm aware of what's being stated.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I'm aware.
Yeah,
I'm aware. Because I'm not oblivious, so I don't walk on this earth with my head in the clouds. Like I'm paying attention to conversations and stuff. So yeah.
Well, two things came to mind. I was thinking, like, you said most people. All
He's still
people,
awake.
Oh yeah.
He thinks we don't know. He thinks we don't know.
He's like
river dance up there.
Sure, he's like, how'd y'all know I was awake? Oh, I don't know. I don't friggin' know.
But Ty, how you said like everybody will drain your energy pretty much. Do you feel like this kind of like I'm curious on what energy it is felt here?
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
so for me, this is I travel a lot, right?
Yeah.
Just came back from Iceland. I was on Iceland. And everywhere we travel a lot. Mm-hmm. I go away from Charlottesville and I'm around people. They're not draining my energy necessarily. It's I think it's more of a home base type of thing.
Right.
So I look at Charlottesville as a place where I need to go away to get refueled. And then I come back in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I I need to go away again. For me, this is a getaway.
Okay.
It's down the street, an hour or so.
Right.
It's not far. It's not Iceland. It's not Paris. It's not California. But this is like still far away from me. This is nowhere near Charlottesville. This is like 3,000 miles away. It's a farm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Surrounded by tons of books, and it's just a different energy here.
Yeah.
So this is a place that I think is pretty much different than me being in Charlottesville or me being somewhere else where I'm at. As much as I am in Charlottesville, I live there. You know, so I look at this as a getaway, and I get refueled, then I go back.
Yeah.
We're thankful. We're thankful you get
And I'm already fueled because I'm fueled from Sundance. So where's hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
So I am an introvert, and I do get drained, but I'm not getting energy from all those people. But here it's almost like a safe haven.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, haven,
Yeah, there you go.
It works.
Oh,
But it's like a safe haven of like, you know, where I could just kind of like feed off of and then like listen and have these deep conversations with, you know, Daniel when we go into these silos, and then I could, you know, just kind of like, damn, okay, yeah. Because, you know, you got to keep up with this guy. And then when you're tired and sick, it's like even harder. So your brain starts to hurt. You're like, fuck. You're like, okay, what he said? Okay, he said something. Okay, let me get back. I think I remember what he said like 5 minutes ago. And he's speaking so fast. So it's a challenge. It's challenging, and I accept the challenge. Yeah. I don't get that from anyone else.
But that is not funny because to some people, they would look at that. Like, they look at you siloing together and, like, what y'all talking about, and they'll be like, that looks exhausting.
Yeah.
But, like, for us type, like, that's, like, sort of part of our refueling.
Yeah.
We kind of need those types of deeper going in, getting into the weeds. We need that. And that is actually, like, a way for us to recuperate. And, like, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's fascinating how maybe there's something about Charlottesville that is, like, mentally is like, this is the place where I am going to be demanded of, and that's that. You know what I mean? Like
that's anywhere where home would be.
Yeah.
Because if I'm working there, then it would be a different type of thing. It would be this thing where, you know what I'm saying. So when I'm in Charlottesville, it's not this thing where you got the people who got the 9-to-5 jobs and they chilling. I'm not chilling.
Right.
I have a burden because I'm like, yo, I haven't did a step and dance competition because of COVID.
Right.
And then after COVID, it was still COVID reasons because you had to have a COVID card. The young people don't have they didn't have COVID cards then. And then they didn't have a Saturday available. They had Friday. I did the comedy show on Friday, so I couldn't do it then. So I'm gonna do it this year, later on this year. But that's a prime example that I did not do it, and it did not get done by someone else.
Right. No one else.
And it's not going to get done because it costs too much money. They may do it somewhere else. MLK Performing Arts Center, somewhere else, like just like low price. But the thing about it is, we need stuff like that. We need to be seen. Diversity needs to be seen on the downtown mall.
Right.
And on the downtown mall, you only have Jefferson, Pavilion, Southern, and all those are Corey Capshaws. And he doesn't rent out to promoters. You got to get with him and kind of, you know what I'm saying? But I refuse to do that.
Right.
So then you got the Paramount. So I have to rent the Paramount if I want to show diversity downtown. So that's a burden to do.
Right.
That's not enjoyable per se.
It's a burden.
I mean, I love the event that I do, and I love how people enjoy it. They're laughing at the comedy show. You know, the comedy show was hugely successful in November because, you know, I defied. You know, we thought that I thought that I was going to lose money because of what's his name? The band.
Dave Matthews.
Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah.
Was at JPJ on the same freaking day, the weekend. After I had my event set up for like 8 months, and then he just booked it on 2 months before. But we did better than we did last year and the year before.
Wow.
So that was like really good, right? And it really gave me more faith in Charlottesville because I thought it was gonna flop. I was like, man, I'm thinking we're probably gonna have like a couple hundred people. This shit gonna be embarrassing, but it was 500 something, almost 600 people.
Wow.
So that's looked real good in Paramount, you know. So, but it still is like kind of. So that kind of burden, you know, is on me, and that's why I like Charlottesville. To your point, Charlottesville, and
it like represents all
it's
of
different.
That. You know
It's
what I mean?
different. It's a job, but I keep as a promoter, you got your responsibility is to keep trying. You don't give up. You don't give up on the demographic. So it's work. That's what I'm facing with. So when I'm out here trying to work and people don't even know this, because I don't really have these long, in-depth conversation about this topic in Charlottesville, because I don't have anyone to really have that conversation with, really, to be honest. Right. Except for Robbie, you know, my lady.
Sure.
She feels like me, you know.
Right, the burden.
Big time. So we're both in the same freaking space.
Right.
One with trying to give money and opportunities and do good work, and then me trying to provide culture and we both struggling with the same thing.
Well, I mean, I salute you. I mean, and I get that feeling like when you're in an area that people know you and you have that kind of moral responsibility, if you're there, that pressure's there. If you go somewhere else, it goes away.
And they hate too.
Yeah.
So I got haters.
Yeah.
But I love haters though. So it's like kind of tricky. It's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
I love haters. So
You love haters?
I want haters. Like I like them.
Yeah. It's like, come on, a little
They're
more.
not arrogant.
That hatred is so
and
more.
they don't like that, and I
That's
love
just
it.
that's just irritation. I don't want you to be an irritator. No, I need hatred.
Yeah, it's
Speaking
hard.
of like
It's
haters, I would.
That is fantastic.
What?
That is
I
amazing.
wouldn't say that I have haters.
You do
Nor
have
would I
haters.
say
You
I'm
do have
trying to
haters.
make
You don't know.
anyone
Oh,
spit up blood.
Yeah.
But in the program, sir,
Give 'em
I
all.
realized,
Give 'em all sauce.
oh, there are people who are not for me.
Okay.
If you are good,
Uh-huh.
if you're good at what you do, yeah.
There's haters, or
Yeah.
there's people who just kind of like it makes them jealous.
Yeah.
Then
People
makes
suck.
them insecure.
And here's the
I
thing.
use that all the
Here's the
time.
thing. Here's the thing, though.
I don't go out in society.
But here's the thing, though. It's like
Yeah, me. I'm my own hater.
it's like I'm not doing anything that another person can't do.
Right.
I'm not doing anything another person can't do.
Right.
But you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's and
No,
that stirs up a lot for people.
yeah.
Well, they hate you because you're showing what they could do and they're not.
You don't even know it because this is a
Yeah.
cultural experience that's like dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing people in there from California,
Yeah.
from freaking Pittsburgh, from Florida, from all over the country. They come in to your little town, to my little event.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
but that like belief, like this is dope. You have to truly believe
Believe
it and
it.
know it and see it, and not
Yeah.
just some sort of like wishful thinking. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this is actually,
yeah.
this is dope.
well, first off, I think people who don't do culture don't know what they're missing. One of the problems is if you don't know what you're missing, you also don't know what you're missing. So when you don't participate in things like culture, you really don't know what you're missing. And that idea, like you're saying, of a kind of burden in different locations, I mean, I totally understand that. And I think on the idea as well, like Michelle, you were asking on these kind of different energies from different people, it's kind of like there's the energy of people that have demands on you, but there's also like the philosophical discussion where it's the many is the one, because you're having a single conversation. Nobody's like demanding anything of anyone or has an expectation. The issue is that for me, like,
I have expectations on my friend.
well, what I mean by expectations is like the expectation is the quality of the flow of the conversation, not the kind of like you're gonna disappoint me or you owe me in a kind of guilt manipulative way. What I mean by expectation, maybe that's not the best word, but it's more like the demand, that you have on you by people. Where, what I mean by that, because it's like when you're hearing a conversation like this, because it is an interesting question, Michelle, on the difference between the introvert who does in fact get energy from this kind of conversation, and but 99.9% of interactions with people are not like this. So it's fair to say that people drain your energy. Yeah. It's almost like the ones that drain your energy. It's not many in the one. It's them demand on you, and they're not trying to participate in anything with you. But here, you get energy from people as an introvert when they're participating in something with
participating.
you.
Yeah, I see that as the thing that I was talking about. It's like here, what I get from here is different than.
Yeah, it's kind of a participation. It's like and it's interesting because the many is participating in the one of the friendship. The many is participating in the one of the philosophical conversation, the exchange of ideas. Whereas most of the time when you interact with people, there's no participation. It's them demanding,
depleting,
hatred, depleting. If there's, it's.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's what people do. No, people are like that. I get it, 100%. Because very, very, very few people you meet want to participate with you. Participation has a kind of energy to it. And it's interesting because healing is a regaining of energy. You feel healed when you get your energy back. And it's all this many into oneness. And the key with most small talks, you don't feel participation. It's just an exchange of information. So there's a difference that's a difference. It's not a many as a one. But there's some about the creative conversation, the philosophical conversation that has an entirely different quality of interaction that feels like many to the one. Because you feel like, too, in a philosophical discussion like this, once you get going, you don't know what's going to come up. You don't always know what you're going to talk about, and yet you feel that. Like a philosophical conversation, you don't plan ahead of time. You don't know where it's going to go. It is a creative act, just like the writing of a novel, just like the working of a story. And all of this, many into the oneness, has this kind of healing feature to it. And that's, almost like if you don't, the less alchemy, the less Eucharist, the less church, because the word alchemy is many into one.
Yeah.
The less of that in your life, the less energy you have. The more of that, the more healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's also this kind of like, we're really radically honest about it. There's a kind of in kind of typical conversations. There's always kind of how do I put this? There is always the looming demand.
Yeah,
of what somebody might just bring up, and now you're kind of like being called into question, or suddenly like there's just this sort of interesting dynamic where you feel a little bit less off the hook. Like it's like when you're off the hook in the sense that like you can just kind of be, and you can talk, and you can kind of go where you go and where the conversations goes, and it's never like, I don't know, maybe this is like just my angle from it, because I can struggle with the people pleasing, so that it's like when you are in the mode of just open conversation, it's very free, whereas a lot of times conversations, even with people you are quite close with or you feel quite like safe with in a sense, it still sometimes could be like, are they suddenly gonna want to interrogate me about this? Whatever it is, or express their like whatever. And I think I'm not saying that like we should avoid that at all. That's a part of life too, and it's good to become resilient, to know how to be able to handle any type of conversation.
You give them ulcers. That's how you deal with it. Give them ulcers.
But the thing,
that's how you deal with it. You give them ulcers.
But there's something about the ability to just like, it's like this off the hook feeling where you can just kind of the only thing that like the only thing you really have to do is like you can listen if you want to, but you can also share or engage or ask questions, and it's so genuine in the sense that the questions aren't like hidden agenda questions. It's not like somebody's trying to, it's just the issue, genuine questions, and it's like
99% of your life, if you want to avoid that, you have to be alone. Like the condition, if you're a betting man, But that's why, like,
and I don't think that's good neither.
That's the problem. So that's why finding the friendships with the creatives and the relationships, because it is so rare to find non-draining, relationships, or relationships look for more extroverted people that are more frivolous or distraction-based, just because the other way of getting energy from people that's a many as a many, or an absorbing, it's not a one as a many, it's an absorbing to lose yourself in.
Conflation.
Yeah, because there's a difference between being a blob and being a concert. A blob is, I think extroversion can tend toward this blobness of just dopamine. Yeah, blobness. But the key is a one is the many, the ambivert, which is a skill. No one is born an ambivert, but everyone must become an ambivert to get the one and the many, and that's the skill of bothness. Ambiversion is the skill.
Yeah, and I feel like that some of the people who you feel most like in that sense of at ease to kind of let the conversation go where it goes. I do find.
I'm sure Tasha has some poems though. She got them. She got them like this.
Bam.
I just, after hearing you speak, I was like, I make film. I have some pieces that I made. I wonder what Ty would think of.
Yeah. What's up, man? Yeah. Can we see something?
I guess it's only on my phone, which is a
is it on Vimeo?
No.
Okay.
No, I
want to see it. Yeah, right.
No.
We go all huddle. I'll cover my mouth. Oh, I be in the front. Yeah, so y'all can be behind me. So if I cough this way. Yeah. I don't know to see it.
That's very
I don't
funny.
know to see it.
Well, I'm making hummus up.
Yeah, let's go. We ready.
Let's
Are you
go.
ready? All right, let's go.
It's
Figure out-
fun.
So let me know where the position.
Yeah, we're sure.
Like,
You can be
y'all
anywhere.
behind me, and I'm like.
Ty, you